My gambling addict husband stole £15 million. Fraudster's wife only found out he stole £15 million when armed police arrived at their home. £15 million to feed his gambling addiction. Until armed police came to my door, I had no idea. I had no idea. No idea. No idea. Dishonesty and deceit is rife online, but when it comes to gambling and money, it's even worse. From MPs receiving financial benefits and refusing to answer facts, to betting companies caring about anything other than profit, or activists making false claims. The UK's ongoing Gambling Act review is a complete and utter mess. A twisted narrative in the mainstream media isn't helping either. Just take a look at this story here in the Times, Daily Mail and JC. The headline states that a gambling addict stole £15 million to fund his online betting addiction, and that his wife was totally unaware. But let's take a look at the details, because Freddy David stole £14.5 million from 55 investors through an elaborate Ponzi scheme between 2005 and 2017. They were told that their money was locked in a high interest fund, generating between 4 and 8% a year. However, he was using the invested capital to make interest payments to other investors in order to maintain the Ponzi while sending further funds to his personal bank accounts. The total loss to his victims was just under £7 million. Not quite the £15 million that's reported to have been stolen in order to fund his gambling habit. A review of his bank accounts showed that money was used for trips abroad to both Greece and Israel, gambling online, starting a restaurant called Let's Meet in London, and also to pay for private school education for his 3 children. Given that the private school fees in that area typically range from £10,000 to £25,000 a year, that would indicate that somewhere between £360,000 and £900,000 went on private education for the kids alone, all of which his wife says she was totally oblivious to, despite her husband donating £18,000 to the Tory party throughout that period, a party she was a councillor for, standing for office twice. Consequently, Freddy David was jailed for 6 years in July 2018. Having served half of his sentence, he was released in June 2021, although these headlines have been prominent once more after a recent ruling has ordered him to pay back a further £1.3 million, or face another 8 years in jail. Probably 4. Judge Taylor was concerned with the issue of dividing joint mortgages between the husband and wife. The court heard Hannah David, who is now divorcing her husband, had no knowledge of wrongdoing throughout their 24 years of marriage. She said that she had virtually zero knowledge of their financial matters, something that many may find surprising given the holidays and private schooling. Freddy David is reported to have bet up to £240,000 in a single day with online betting operators in this case. A jaw-dropping fact for regular viewers of this channel, as we face source of wealth and affordability checks for a mere £500 deposit. Perhaps the strangest thing in this case is that the bookmakers whom Mr. David placed bets with have not been named, nor has the UK Gambling Commission issued a fine. In fact, it appears as though there's been no wrongdoing whatsoever. So is this a story of a man who stole £15 million to fund a gambling addiction, as the headline suggests? Or is it a story of a man who defrauded 55 people of their life savings, spent £6 million roughly on holidays, private education, starting a restaurant and also some gambling, before his wife, a councillor for the Tory party and former solicitor, divorced him to save her half of the mortgage, all the while getting Mr. David a lenient sentence for blaming it on gambling addiction? I guess we'll never know for sure, we can only speculate. However, this leads me to the real problem for UK gambling right now. A very unfair debate, because there are 3 main groups within this debate. Betting companies, a small number of with a huge amount of funding. Secondly, consumers, 30 million people place a bet per week. And the gambling lobby, which is generally made up of ex-addicts, bereaved families, activists and offline gambling firms funding. Sadly, only 2 of them are being allowed a voice. The big betting companies seem to influence politicians with perks and consultancy fees, and the mainstream media's interest sits with victim-based articles that assist their brand image. I know this as I personally contacted the Daily Mail and the Times about Football Index's imminent collapse 6 months before it happened. and they were not interested. Until after, when £124 million of customer funds disappeared, wrecking many people's lives in the process. And those 30 million consumers that don't have a problem and are already frustrated with submitting 3 years financial statements to withdraw their winnings are flat out ignored. Having spoken with my MP about these issues, he agreed to write to the gambling minister, PHILP, to ask specific questions. The questions were ignored and a template answer was received in response. Unsatisfied, he wrote to Mr. PHILP again, who ignored and responded with another template answer. At the third time of asking, my MP told me further contact wouldn't be necessary and I should await the gambling review's outcome. A review that doesn't consider the 30 million consumer majority that it impacts. Maybe the £14 billion that we all donated to the Treasury in taxes via the gambling industry last year was not enough. Instead, Mr. PHILP is considering evidence like the landmark study conducted by gambling activist Dr. Philip Newell earlier in the year, where he analysed 6.5 million Lloyds bank accounts, but forgot to take into account withdrawals. Or speaking to activists funded by offline gambling, ex-addicts and bereaved families. All show extreme levels of bias, as you may expect, and when questioned on specific points, they refuse to explain or back up statements that they make. Even Miss David is calling for affordability checks and tougher online regulation, despite virtually zero knowledge of understanding it herself. At first, it may sound like a reasonable idea, but as we all know, betting companies repeatedly abuse the use of affordability checks and have done so for years. 30 million Britons place a bet each week, with studies showing that 99.7% do so without developing a gambling problem. Of the 0.3% who do, perhaps like Mr. David, the checks are not used by these private betting companies. Instead, they're used on people who are savvy enough to beat them, like many of you who follow this channel. Betting companies cannot be entrusted with this responsibility. They've routinely failed to use these intrusive checks in the right manner, and it's evident that they've got no intention of doing it going forward. Their only interest is to avoid having this power taken from them, which it absolutely should be. And so we're all going to be faced with the likelihood of prohibitive and intrusive financial checks that are used against us, submitting sensitive data to big betting organisations to pick and choose which losers they accept bets from, while sending everybody else who remains to crypto betting in a totally unregulated black market. All I can say is, well done, you absolute fools.